Is 2026 really going to be the year? The year self-driving cars finally hit the mainstream. We've heard about this promise for years now, but 2026. That seems to be the date lots of experts are circling on their calendars. Welcome to the deep dive. We unpack complex topics, try to boil them down, and give you the important stuff. Today, we are diving deep into the future of autonomous driving. We're putting a sharp focus on what 2026 and the years after that might actually look like. And we've got a great stack of sources for you, everything from recent AAA surveys on public trust to global regulatory reports, and some really deep insights from the big autonomous vehicle companies themselves.
Yeah, and our mission today really is to cut through all the noise, all the hype, the jargon. We want to give you a clear picture, latest developments, the incredible potential these things hold, but also, crucially, the big hurdles that are still out there for this tech. What's really fascinating, I think, is just how close these technologies are to changing everything, your daily commute, how our cities are even designed.
Okay, so 2026. You said it, lots of people are circling it. What is it about that year? Why 2026? Why are experts pointing there for such a big shift?
It feels like a convergence point. Autonomous vehicles, they're just becoming incredibly sophisticated now. You've got huge advancements in sensors, LiDAR, radar, cameras, all working together, plus major steps forward in AI, artificial intelligence, and really detailed mapping. These capabilities are just pushing self-driving systems way beyond where they were even a couple of years ago. So a lot of industry folks believe 2026 will mark a really significant shift, especially for widespread adoption of Level 3 personal vehicles.
Level 3. That's the one where the car drives, but you still need to be ready to take over.
Exactly. Eyes off the road sometimes, but mind still engaged. And beyond that, we're expecting 2026 to be the real start of large-scale commercial development for robotaxis, those fully autonomous rideshare services. No human driver needed at all.
Okay, so this isn't just like predictions on paper. We're seeing actual steps being taken. What are the key milestones happening right now that make this 2026 idea seem, real?
Oh, definitely. We're seeing governments start to lay the groundwork. For instance, back in December 2024, Beijing put out new regulations. They specifically clarified expanding autonomous driving to personal vehicles. Those rules kick in April 1st, 2025. And Wuhan announced similar plans too. This creates a clear legal basis, for L3 driving your own car. It tackles some of that legal uncertainty that slowed things down.
That does sound like a big deal for clarity over there. But, is Beijing's approach something we might see mirrored elsewhere, like the US? Or are we seeing two different paths emerging? That could create friction later, couldn't it?
That's a really sharp question. It definitely highlights the tension. But seeing that kind of regulatory clarity, automakers are definitely reacting. They're speeding up their plans. Everyone's looking at 2025 to 2027 as this critical window for mass production of L3 vehicles. You've got companies like Li Auto, for example, aiming for supervised L3 by 2025. XPeng, they've also flagged 2025 as key for their L3 mass production. And globally, Tesla, they aim to accelerate the rollout of their FSD, full self-driving unsupervised version, sometime in 2025. So, for your own car, L3 could be a real option very, very soon.
Okay, and the Robotaxis, we've heard about pilot programs for a while. What makes 2026 different for them actually becoming a business?
2023, 2024, that was kind of an adjustment period for Robotaxis. Some consolidation, companies merging or dropping out. But now, the leaders are clearly shifting gears into commercial operations. They see 2026 as the first year for real large-scale development. They've got these ambitious plans for mass deployment going right into 2030. It's moving beyond just testing. They want to run profitable services. We have a great example right here in the sources. May Mobility, back in February 2025, launched its first commercial driver-out service. This is in Peachtree Corners, Georgia.
Driver out, meaning no safety driver.
Exactly. They'd been offering public rides there since September 2024 with safety drivers, but now, fully driverless, on a commercial route, people paying for rides.
Wow. Okay, that is a milestone. So what does it take technologically for a company like May Mobility to actually, pull the human driver?
It really shows how mature the tech is getting. Their service uses something called multi-policy decision-making, or MPDM. What's kind of cool about MPDM is it uses these in-situ AI models. Basically, it learns and adapts on the fly to really complex, unpredictable driving situations right there in real time. Makes it robust enough for commercial routes.
And how does this fit into the bigger picture globally? You mentioned Beijing, but what about elsewhere?
Right. The global regulatory scene is, that's still pretty patchy.
Yeah.
Especially in the US, with different states having different rules. Creates headaches. Europe, though, they're pushing ahead with cross-border testing, more unified safety rules. Stricter, maybe, but unified. And then you look at Asia Pacific, China, Japan, Singapore, they're really excelling in level 4 and level 5 testing. That's the highly and fully autonomous stuff that's driven a lot by government policies, smart city initiatives. Germany and Japan have even regulated consumer use of L3 lane keeping systems already, so people could actually buy and use it. That helps adoption early on.
Okay, we've laid out the what and the when, but maybe the bigger question for a lot of listeners is why? Why do we even need driverless cars? What's the big promise here?
I think the most compelling argument, honestly, is safety. It just comes down to safety. When you look at the data, human error it's massive. It's the overwhelming cause of traffic accidents. People drive distracted phones, sure, but also just not paying attention. They drive drowsy, angry, impaired. And even when we're at our absolute best, our reaction times just aren't instant. There's something like a 2.5-second lag between seeing something and reacting at 60 miles per hour.
2.5 seconds. How far is that?
That's, let me think. It's like the length of 2 basketball courts. That your car travels before you even start braking. That built-in human delay, it has tragic consequences. AVs are designed specifically to overcome
That really puts it in perspective. So the idea is these cars are just statistically better drivers. What does the actual data show? How do they stack up against us humans?
There's a fascinating peer-reviewed study. It's about to be published in Traffic Injury Prevention. They analyzed, get this, 56.7 million miles driven by Waymo self-driving cars. In cities like Austin, LA, Phoenix, San Francisco. And the key thing, all these miles were driven without a human safety driver on board.
Okay, so pure autonomous driving. What did they find?
The results are pretty striking when you compare them to human driving under similar conditions. Waymo's AVs had 81% fewer crashes where the airbag deployed. They had 85% fewer crashes with suspected serious injuries or worse. And this detail is amazing. 96% fewer injury crashes at intersections. Why? Mostly because the AI spots other cars running red lights faster than a person can react.
96%.
Yeah, and 92% fewer crashes that resulted in injuries to pedestrians.
Okay, those numbers are significant. What does that mean on a bigger scale nationally? How does that translate into impact for you listening right now?
Well, let's do a thought experiment. If, and it's a big if, because the study didn't have enough fatal crash data to be definitive, but if that 85% reduction in serious crashes could also apply to fatal crashes, and you apply that across the 3.3 trillion miles driven in the US each year, theoretically it could save around 34,000 lives annually.
34,000, just wow. Especially when you put it next to the actual number. What was it for 2024?
Around 39,345 traffic fatalities in the US in 2024, all due to human driving errors, essentially. So yeah, the potential scale of lives saved is just profound.
Safety is obviously huge, paramount really. But what else? What other benefits could we see from driverless cars changing things?
Beyond the safety aspect, which is, number one, think about efficiency. Just overall efficiency in how we move around. Autonomous vehicles, they could optimize traffic flow, talk to each other, react instantly. That could seriously reduce congestion, cut down on fuel consumption too. Just smoother, more efficient transport systems. And then there's accessibility. This is huge. Making transportation available to people with disabilities, older adults, anyone who can't drive themselves. It offers incredible freedom. This also feeds into this idea of mobility as a service, or MOS. Integrating ride-hailing, public transit, delivery, all into one seamless network you access on demand. And ultimately, it contributes to building smarter cities, optimized traffic, less pollution, seamless connections. It fits into that whole vision.
It sounds incredible, almost like science fiction becoming real, but every big change faces pushback, faces hurdles. What are the biggest roadblocks here? Especially thinking about how people actually feel about this tech.
That is such an important point. Because despite the safety data we just talked about, public perception, public trust, that remains a really significant challenge. There was a AAA survey just from February 2025. It found 6 out of 10 U.S. drivers, that 60%, still say they are afraid to ride in a self-driving car.
60% are afraid, even now.
Yep. And only 13% actually trust riding in them. That trust number went up slightly from last year, but still only 13%. And what's really telling is what drivers want companies to focus on. 78% said prioritize improving existing safety systems like automatic emergency braking. Only 13% thought developing full self-driving should be the priority.
That's a huge gap. The data points one way, people's gut feelings point another. Why do you think that disconnect exists?
It's a classic psychological thing, really. Think about it. One dramatic news story about a self-driving car incident, even if it's super rare, it sticks in your mind. That's called availability bias. Meanwhile, the thousands of crashes caused by human drivers every single day, That just becomes background noise.
Yep.
That's base rate neglect. We ignore the common danger because it's familiar.
Like being scared of flying, but fine driving to the airport.
Exactly. Even though statistically, flying is way, way safer. Our brains latch onto the novel, the unfamiliar, the thing we feel we can't control. So overcoming that fear, that apprehension, is going to take a lot of transparency, really clear communication about how safe these systems are, but also, importantly, what their current limitations are. Like that same survey found 74% of drivers knew about robotaxis, but 53% said nope, wouldn't ride in one.
Even younger people, I thought they'd be more open.
They are more likely to consider it, millennials and Gen X. But even among those groups, most still said they wouldn't choose to ride in one right now. Trust is a big hurdle.
Okay, public trust is one thing. What about the rules, the regulations? That sounds like a complete maze for these companies.
Oh, absolutely. Regulatory hurdles are critical. Just navigating the complex legal stuff is essential if this is ever going to be widespread. It needs governments and tech companies working really closely together. And like we said, the U.S. landscape is fragmented, state-by-state rules. It creates inconsistencies. Europe's trying for a more unified approach, even if it's strict. But a huge, huge sticking point is liability. What happens when an AV does crash? Who's responsible? The owner, the manufacturer, the software developer. Our traditional laws just weren't built for autonomous systems making decisions. Figuring that out is complex, and it's definitely delaying large-scale approvals.
And beyond the car itself, the tech, the rules, what about bigger picture societal stuff? What concerns pop up there?
Well, ethical questions are massive, like the classic trolley problem, but for cars. How do you program an AV to react in an unavoidable accident scenario? Who does it prioritize? Then there's the whole economic disruption angle. Job losses. Think about truckers, taxi drivers, delivery drivers, bus drivers. That's a huge concern for policymakers. The potential backlash is real, and it influences how fast things move. And finally, data. These AVs generate and rely on enormous amounts of data, so security and privacy are paramount concerns. Hacking, misuse of location data. Governments are rightly hesitant without rock-solid security frameworks in place.
Okay, so we've got this incredible potential, these amazing safety stats, but also very real challenges. Public fear, regulatory knots, ethical dilemmas. Looking beyond 2026 now, what does the landscape look like? Where are things heading?
You're seeing the major players really double down now on scaling, on actually making this a viable business. And what's interesting is how they're thinking about it. Companies like Pony.ai, they're not just building cars, they're focused on the unit economics. How to make each ride profitable. Pony plans to have thousands of robotaxis out by 2025, double that in 2026. Their goal is operational break-even. That's huge. WeRide is another one targeting large-scale commercialization by 2026. Their aim, get the per-kilometer cost lower than a traditional taxi. That would absolutely change the game.
Lower cost than a taxi, wow.
And the EV giants are jumping in hard. Tesla announced its Cybercab for 2026, priced under $30,000 supposedly. Operations starting late 2026. They're talking about an end-to-end AI model. Even Maple's solution, which is ambitious. XPeng also announced a new competitive robotaxi for 2026. So the race is definitely on.
That focus on cost and profitability makes sense from a business perspective. But how do they balance that drive for efficiency, especially removing the safety driver with maintaining absolute safety? Doesn't that risk eroding public trust if things go wrong?
That is the absolute core tension, isn't it? The cost of those human safety drivers, salaries, benefits, training, it's massive. It's a huge chunk of the operating cost. So yeah, removing them is seen as essential for profitability, for scaling up. That's why you see China and the US really pushing hard on fully unmanned demonstrations, testing the limits, but it puts immense pressure on making sure the safety validation is bulletproof. Any misstep there could be a huge setback for public trust.
What else is shaping the longer-term view? Any bigger trends?
Definitely. Geopolitics, for one. Tensions are impacting supply chains for critical parts, semiconductors, sensors. Companies are having to diversify, look at domestic production. We're also seeing these big mega trends push things along, stricter environmental rules, tougher safety regulations worldwide. That's accelerating the move towards case vehicles, connected, autonomous, shared, electric. Governments are mandating it. And finally, how we use these things is changing. Direct-to-consumer models are emerging. Think subscription services for AVs. That compresses the value chain, but also brings up new regulatory questions around data privacy, consumer rights, things governments are grappling with right now.
Okay, so we've really dug in deep today. We've seen this landscape of incredibly fast, tech advances, amazing safety potential, but also real public apprehension, complex regulations. And it does seem like 2026 is shaping up to be a really pivotal year, not just for the tech, but for how it starts weaving into our lives, our cities.
Yeah, we have that Waymo study showing dramatic safety gains, the potential to save tens of thousands of lives if it scales. That's incredibly powerful. But then you have the AAA survey showing most people are still scared. Trust is still a major hurdle that needs focused effort to overcome.
Which leaves us, and leaves you listening, with a really provocative thought to chew on. Given this huge potential for safety improvements, for efficiency gains, should we be pushing harder to accelerate widespread AV adoption? Maybe deal with the public concerns as they come up, focus on getting the life-saving tech out there? Or should we pump the brakes? Focus first on building that public trust, getting those comprehensive regulations absolutely perfect, even if it means delaying these technologies, potentially delaying those safety benefits from reaching everyone.
It's a tough balance. What parts of this future excite you the most? Or maybe what concerns you the most? We'd encourage you to really think about it. How might autonomous vehicles change your life, your commute, your city? It's a future that's arriving faster than many of us think.